me, ask the first question. What are your perspectives regarding the immigration on the OECD countries in terms of the financial crisis that just happened?
So, one of the things that we know is that immigration is very much driven by economic opportunity. So that, if a country is growing quickly, then it tends to attract immigrants, whether they're documented or undocumented. A more rapidly growing economy is one that is attractive. Jobs are available, and so forth and so on. So, one of the things we know about the financial crisis is that it was associated with the deep recession in the United States and in European countries as well. So under those circumstances, it's no longer an attractive place for immigrants to come. And in addition, it becomes a place that immigrants tend to leave. And so both documented and undocumented immigrants tend to leave countries that are in the midst of a recession. For the U.S., it was very clear that during the worst of the downturn, there was a lot of out-migration. In addition, for the U.S., one aspect that was very interesting about migration patterns is that in the U.S., construction is a sector that tends to attract a lot of workers from Mexico and other parts of Latin America. Many of them are not documented. And so when the housing bust happened in the U.S., the collapse of construction really led to a situation where there was tremendous out-migration of both documented and a lot of undocumented construction workers. So it was very, very apparent in the U.S. case because the crisis was very much associated with a sector that had a very high share of migrants.
Okay. Is there any perspective that you share in terms of the skilled labor migration or coming into the country or out of the country during the financial crisis?
Okay, so that's an interesting question. That to what extent does a financial crisis and an economic recession tend to diminish the interest on the part of skilled workers to come to the United States or to other wealthy countries. And I think that you see a much less of an impact on skilled migration. But it is true that even at the top levels where the high tech and in sort of the pharmaceuticals, really the high skill levels, companies were not in the business. They weren't expanding. They weren't doing innovative activities. Some were doing R&D in California, but by and large, companies tended to hunker down, not hoard cash, and so they weren't engaged in the type of R&D activities that would be very attractive to skilled migrants.
Thank you, Professor.
Immigrants made up 40% of all the population growth in OECD countries between 2001 and 2011. But the economic crisis put a brake on migration. After rising since 2001 in most countries, it fell sharply in those hit hard by the crisis, such as Spain, Portugal, and Italy. In the US, it fell, but is now picking up. And in Germany, immigration has risen sharply since 2000. The number of permanent immigrants to OECD countries increased by 2% in 2011, and preliminary data suggests a similar increase in 2012.
So what made you come from India to the United States?
Plenty of reasons, but the foremost was the quality of the education. US is the mecca for the international education because of higher quality of research development, and the facilities that is available to the international students by the universities. For example, Brandeis, international standards, excellent professors. That was one. And secondly was broadening of the horizon, because since a lot of students come there, so in my class there are students from more than 30 countries, so it's like a mini world. So it helps you to understand the perspective of other cultures, and diversity. And diversity is what businesses love, because if you know how to react to a certain situation, to a certain areas of life, whether it's business, and you have that perspective of expanded horizon, and so it helps you to do a good business strategy. So that also helps a lot. So expansion of the horizon, mental horizon, and finally it was the opportunities. What one of my friends love to say: if you go to the U.S., study there, you can go any part of the globe. So that U.S. education is recognized not only in the U.S. itself, but Europe, Asia. That's all. That's the best.
Okay, I want to ask you a question. Why did you come to United States from China?
Alright, the major reason is the very, very advanced education system here in United States, because it's very well known in China. So I want to be here and study some more popular, more practical, more global financial practices and academic knowledge in here, and so help me to prove my career and my education. So that's basically our reason.
Okay.
Immigration has played a vital part in the economic growth of much of the developed world. Countries like Britain, Ireland and Spain have attracted hundreds of thousands of workers to take up jobs that native populations are unable or unwilling to perform. But now, with the downturn, it's these newcomers who are the most exposed to the risk of layoff. According to the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, unemployment rates among immigrants are significantly higher than among the population as a whole.
In the case of Spain, 1 out of 5 migrants is now unemployed, and 1 out of 3 African migrants is unemployed. And that's particularly worrisome in the current crisis, that those countries who are hardest hit by the downturn, like Spain, Ireland, the United Kingdom, have also experienced record high inflows prior to the crisis. And we know from past experiences that this can have a lasting impact on their labor market outcomes.
The reasons for the difficulties facing migrant workers are various. First, they tend to be overrepresented in sectors that have been hardest hit in the crisis, like construction, wholesale trade and hospitality. It's also because they tend to have less secure contractual arrangements, with many in temporary or part-time jobs. And third, with jobs becoming scarcer, immigrants face potential discrimination in hiring and firing. According to the OECD, it's important that governments respond responsibly. Now, more than ever, immigrants need to keep a foothold in the jobs market in order to maintain the process of integration.
It's very important that the labor market integration of immigrants remains a priority in these challenging times. If you don't invest into integration today, you will have a much higher bill to be paid in the future in terms of lack of integration.
Over the last months, immigration flows into the developed world have slowed as a result of the recession. And one result of that has been a decline in the remittances sent back by workers, for many families an essential part of their income. But the slowdown is only temporary, says the OECD. When the recovery starts, demand for labour will recover. Migration will remain an essential ingredient in the economy of the 21st century. For OECD TV, this is Hugh Schofield in Paris.